Today's video is brought to you by Hellofresh. Honestly, who has time to cook a full meal from scratch anymore? We're all super busy. After a full day of work, nobody wants to spend hours preparing a meal, let alone this guy. Unfortunately, the other options can be tricky too. Eating out, still a bit dicey. That COVID seems to be coming back. Also pretty expensive. And then delivery, it's great. Love delivery. But it's super unhealthy. Well, fortunately, HelloFresh is the perfect solution that checks every box. It's going to help you try something that's fresh and adventurous, it's affordable, it's convenient, it's environmentally conscious, and it's all done from the comfort of your own home. Because who likes leaving their home? Not this guy. Yes, with HelloFresh, you get a specially designed 5-star meal kit that is going to break you out of that recipe rut. They work with local farmers to send you delicious, locally sourced meals to help you skip the meal prep and put dinner on the table in 30 minutes or less. I haven't tried it because they don't ship it to where I live. But David, who I do this channel with, has tried it. He always gets the packages and he's always like, dude, don't be jealous, but look at these pictures. HelloFresh is a perfect service because of its flexibility, but also because of its responsible business model. If you like variety, you're never locked into any option. You can change your preferences for a week if you want some spontaneity, or just add in some extra protein. Who doesn't love more meat? And of course, HelloFresh makes it easy to support them by making virtually everything recyclable. Go to HelloFresh.com and use the code BRAINFOOD16 to get 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts. 16 free meals with the code BRAINFOOD16 at HelloFresh.com. And now today's video. In the opening sequence of 1965's Thunderball, James Bond, having just dispatched the villainous Spectre agent Colonel Jacques Bavard, flees to the rooftop of Bavard's French chateau, dons a futuristic-looking jetpack, and makes his dramatic escape. Given its fantastical, over-the-top nature, this scene was obviously accomplished via the magic of Hollywood special effects. Right? Well, no. Actually, as incredible as it might seem, the vehicle featured on screen was a real-life working jetpack developed by Bell Aircraft and flown for the cameras by Bell test pilot Bill Suter. But if working jetpacks existed back in the 1960s, why then don't we see them in every garage alongside flying cars? Well, as the long and frustrating history of jetpack development shows, it's certainly not from a lack of trying. The idea of the jet or rocket pack has existed in popular culture for a long time, appearing in fiction as early as the 1890s. However, it wasn't until the development of jet and rocket technology in the 1920s and 1930s that man-sized flying machines became a practical reality. One oft-cited candidate for the first working jetpack is the Himmelstormer, or Heavenstormer, a device supposedly tested by the Nazis in 1994 to allow combat engineers and assault troops to jump over trenches, barbed wire, and other obstacles. The Himmelstormer was based on pulse jet technology, most famously used in the Chrysler F-103 or the V-1 cruise missile, some 12,000 of which were launched by the Germans against targets in Britain and the Low Countries between 1944 and 1945. Unlike regular jet engines, pulse jets have no rotating compressor or turbine blades and instead use a set of spring-loaded shutters or vanes to burn fuel and air in a series of high-frequency pulses generating thrust. This simple construction makes pulse jets cheap to manufacture, but also loud and inefficient compared to other jet engines. The Himmelstormer incorporated 2 pulse jets, one strapped to the soldier's back to provide vertical lift and one mounted to his chest on a swivel, allowing him to steer. In testing, the device allowed soldiers to cover a distance of 50 meters at a height of 15 meters. It didn't. For despite being widely covered on the internet, the Himmelstormer never actually existed at all. This fanciful piece of Nazi tech was in fact invented out of whole cloth by Canadian author Ernst Zundel, first appearing in his 1976 book German Secret Weapons and Wonder Weapons of World War II. An ardent conspiracy theorist and Holocaust denier, Zundel's extensive bibliography includes such choice titles as Secret Nazi Polar Explorations, Hitler at the South Pole, The Hitler We Loved and Why, UFOs, Nazi Secret Weapon, Auschwitz, Dachau and Buchenwald, The Greatest Fraud in History, and Did 6 Million People Really Die? And this should give you a good idea of the credibility that can be attached to his claims. None. In any case, the Himmelstormer, as commonly described, would likely never have worked. The Argus AS-014 pulsed jet used in the V-1 cruise missile measured about 4 meters long and produced only around 270 kilograms of thrust. A pulse jet small enough to strap to a man's back would not only be too weak to lift it off to ground, but would also become far too hot and elicit serious burns. This, combined with the inherent difficulty of controlling such a device, would have made the Himmelstormer an impractical death trap. So, despite what the Rocketeer, Captain America, and Iron Sky would have you believe, Nazi stormtroopers flying around in jetpacks was never actually a thing. It was not until after the Second World War that practical jetpack development began in earnest. One early candidate for the inventor of the jetpack is Romanian inventor Justin Capra, who claimed to have built and flown a flying rucksack in 1956. Capra approached both the Romanian military and the American embassy in Bucharest with his invention, but neither expressed any interest, and Capra was imprisoned by the communist government for approaching the Americans. Capra later claimed that the Americans stole his idea, but he was unable to provide any credible evidence that he ever actually built or flew his invention. The invention of the first practical jetpack is thus commonly attributed to Wendell Moore, an engineer at Bell Aircraft of Buffalo, New York. In 1953, Moore began experimenting with a vehicle called the Small Rocket Lift Device, or SRLD, a backpack-like contraption designed to carry a single person over a short distance. The technical challenges facing Moore, and indeed all jetpack designers to the present day, were daunting. To be practical, a jetpack must be lightweight enough to comfortably wear, produce enough thrust to lift a man off the ground, carry enough fuel to cover a useful distance, and be stable, safe, and easy to fly. Requirements that are frequently at odds with one another. While the ideal power source for a jetpack is a turbojet engine, which can provide constant thrust over an extended period and operate at reasonable temperatures, in the early 1950s, no turbojet engine was simultaneously compact and powerful enough to fit on a man's back and lift him into the air. The only alternative was to use rocket engines, which presented problems of their own. Rocket engines are notoriously thirsty, severely limiting their endurance, and produce dangerously hot exhaust gases that can potentially injure the pilot. Moore's initial SRLD prototype used cold compressed nitrogen gas stored in tanks and vented through a pair of flexible nozzles controlled by twin joysticks. Intended as a test bed for evaluating stability, control, and other technical issues, for initial testing, the SRLD was flown tethered to a special rig. While much safer than future iterations, the SRLD nonetheless had its fair share of teething problems. For example, on one occasion, the nozzles were found to be mounted too close to the operator, causing the rocket blast to tear his shirt sleeves clean off. These early experiments soon caught the attention of the US Army's Transportation, Research and Engineering Command, who in 1958 launched Project Grasshopper, a concerted effort to develop a practical rocket pack to allow combat engineers and assault troops to jump over minefields and other obstacles. Rival companies, Aerojet and Tharkle, submitted nitrogen-powered jump belts very similar to Bell's SRLD, but Bell eventually won the government contract to build a combat-ready rocket belt. As compressed nitrogen had insufficient energy density to meet the Army's requirements, Wendell Moore switched to more potent propellants, high-test hydrogen peroxide, or HTP. 10 times more concentrated than the peroxide used to bleach hair. When passed over a suitable catalyst, HTP decomposes violently into hot, high-pressure steam and oxygen. It's also highly corrosive, capable of stripping flesh from the bone in seconds. Nonetheless, throughout the 1940s, HTP was widely used in torpedoes and a variety of rocket-powered vehicles, including the German V-2 ballistic missile and the Messerschmitt Me-163 Comet interceptor. And for more on this, please do check out our previous video, the German rocket fighter that dissolved its pilots alive. Weighing 57 kilograms, fully fueled, the Bell rocket was built around a fiberglass frame mounted to the operator's body. To this was mounted 2 tanks holding 19 liters of HTP, plus a tank of compressed nitrogen to push the propellant through the system. HTP passed from the tanks over a platinum catalyst, converting it to high-pressure steam and oxygen, which exited through a pair of flexible nozzles mounted on either side of the pack. These produced 127 kilograms of thrust. The angle of these nozzles was controlled by a pair of joysticks, allowing the pack to be directed forward, backward, left, and right. Thrust was controlled by twisting the throttle on the right-hand joystick. Tethered test flights began in early 1961, mostly flown by Moore himself. Once more, the pack and its control system proved temperamental, with one flight on February the 17th nearly ending in disaster when the rocket belt ran away and snapped its tether, causing Moore to crash into the ground and break his kneecap. Eventually, however, most of the kinks were ironed out, and on April the 20th, 1961, the Bell rocket belt made its first free flight at Niagara Falls Municipal Airport, with engineer Harold Graham at the controls. While this flight only lasted 13 seconds, subsequent tests further expanded the device's flight envelope, with Graham ultimately achieving distances of 262 meters, altitudes of 60 meters, and speeds of 96 kilometers an hour. Once satisfied with its reliability, the Bell team began demonstrating the rocket belt before military officials across the United States and around the world. Some of these displays were more successful than others. While demonstrating the rocket belt as a potential means for NASA personnel to escape a rocket launch tower in an emergency, Harold Graham plummeted 6 meters onto his head and knocked himself unconscious. More encouraging was on October 11, 1961, a flight in which Graham took off from a landing craft anchored off Fort Bragg, North Carolina, flew across the water, and landed in front of an astonished President John F. Kennedy. But while outwardly futuristic and impressive, the rocket belt was hardly the safest or most practical vehicle. For one thing, despite the greater energy density of hydrogen peroxide compared to nitrogen, the rocket belt only carried enough fuel for 21 seconds of operation. This, along with the fact that the rocket belt flew at altitudes too low to use a parachute, meant that running out of fuel was almost inevitably fatal, forcing operators to carefully monitor their fuel consumption throughout each flight. To help avoid mishaps, the rocket belt incorporated a special timer with a buzzer mounted to the operator's helmet, which sounded every second as soon as the throttle was opened. After 15 seconds, the intermittent buzzer became a continuous tone, warning the pilot that he had just 6 seconds to land. The rocket belt was also deafeningly loud, exceeding 130 decibels, and while cooler running than most rocket engines, the hot peroxide exhaust could still inflict severe burns, forcing operators to wear special heat-resistant Nomex clothing. These limitations made the rocket belt impractical for use in combat, and in 1962, the Army, having spent nearly $150,000 on what was essentially an expensive toy, pulled the plug on the project. But the rocket belt had already captured the public's imagination, and the rocket belt flying team enjoyed a long career as a novelty act for special events, making dramatic appearances at the 1964 World's Fair, the first Super Bowl in 1967, the opening ceremonies of the 1984 Los Angeles and 1996 Atlanta Summer Olympics, and of course, in the James Bond film Thunderball. Today, a handful of qualified pilots, including stunt performer Dan Schlund, aka Rocket Man, continue to fly updated versions of the Bell rocket belt for movies, TV, and special events. Despite the commercial failure of the rocket belt, Bell Aircraft continued to develop personal flying machines for the military. Their next attempt was the Pogo, their small rocket-powered flying platform designed to carry 2 people. Originally intended for use by Apollo astronauts on the moon, Pogo was also pitched to the Army as a flying jeep for carrying soldiers over rough or dangerous terrain. While Bell managed to make the Pogo extremely reliable, stable, and easy to fly, NASA turned it down in favor of the more conventional lunar roving vehicle. While the Army decided the Pogo was insufficiently GI-proof for combat use, and the project, like the rocket belt, was eventually cancelled. Undaunted, Bell abandoned the use of hydrogen peroxide and teamed up with the Williams Research Corporation of Walled Lake, Michigan, to develop a turbojet engine compact and powerful enough for individual manned flight. The result was the WR-19, which weighed only 31 kilograms and could produce over 193 kilograms of thrust. Bell incorporated the WR-19 into a single-man flying machine, imaginatively named the Jet Belt, which, like the earlier rocket belt, was steered by moving a pair of flexible jet nozzles using joysticks. The Jet Belt first flew on April the 7th, 1969, at Niagara Falls, piloted by Robert Corter. Subsequent flights revealed the device to be capable of flying for up to 25 minutes at speeds of 135 kilometers an hour, making it far more practical for military use. Despite this, however, the US Army saw the Jet Belt as too heavy, complex, and temperamental, and, like all its predecessors, the device never entered service. After the 1960s, military research into jetpacks effectively stopped, but over the following decades, various inventors have attempted to push the technology forward. In 1992, insurance salesman Brad Barker, businessman Joe Wright, and engineer Larry Stanley, and professional inventor Doug Malowitsky formed a company to develop an updated version of the original Bell rocket belt using lightweight alloys and composite materials. The resulting design, dubbed the RB2000, was first flown on June 12, 1995 by Bell test pilot Bill Suter and succeeded in increasing the design's maximum endurance from 21 to 30 seconds. Unfortunately, like the rocket pack's hydrogen peroxide fuel, the four men's business partnership proved dangerously volatile, and the whole venture collapsed into a bizarre maelstrom of paranoia, intrigue, and lawsuits, culminating in Barker being kidnapped by Stanley for 8 days and Wright being murdered by an unknown assailant. But the allure of the rocket belt survived even this outlandish soap opera, and today modernized examples are sold commercially by both Mexico's Technological Aerospace Mexicana, or TAM, and Colorado's Jetpack H202. So, if you've got access to hydrogen peroxide, $250,000 burning a hole in your pocket, and a death wish, you too can experience the thrill of untethered human flight for 30 seconds at a time. Far safer and more practical are the wide array of turbojet-powered jetpacks made possible by recent advancements in gas turbine technology. Among the most famous of these are the jetpacks designed and flown by Swiss pilot Yves Rossi, known around the world as Jetman. His packs, consisting of 2-meter-wide carbon fiber wings strapped to his back and powered by 4 JetCat P400 compact turbojet engines, have reached speeds of up to 304 kilometers an hour and carried Rossi across the Grand Canyon, the Alps, the English Channel, and other landmarks. As impressive as they are, however, Rossi's creations do not quite fit the classic image of a jetpack being incapable of taking off under their own power. Instead, Rossi must be carried aloft by a separate aircraft and jump free before igniting his engines. He also cannot land while wearing the wing and must instead jettison it and parachute separately to Earth. More in keeping with popular conception of the jetpack is Jetpack Aviation's JB9, which made its public debut in November 2015 by flying around the Statue of Liberty. Developed by Australian businessman David Mayman and American engineer and inventor Nelson Tyler, the JB9 is powered by 2 AMT Nike jet engines, producing 160 kilograms of thrust and can achieve speeds of 100 kilometers an hour for around 10 minutes. Even more science fiction is the Daedalus flight pack developed by British inventor Richard Browning. More real-life Iron Man suit, the jetpack, the Daedalus consists of a metal exoskeleton fitted with 6 22-kilogram thrust micro-turbojet engines, 2 on the back and 2 on each arm, allowing the wearer to maneuver the suit simply by moving their arms. On November 9th, 2017, Browning set a Guinness World Record for jet engine-powered flying suits, reaching a speed of 51.5 kilometers an hour over Laguna Park in Reading, England. On the more accessible end of things, in 2008, Canadian inventor Raymond Lee patented the JetLev, a rocket pack that uses jet ski technology to levitate the wearer on jets of water pumped from a lake or ocean below. JetLevs are available for rental at dozens of tourist resorts around the world, and in possibly the first practical deployment of jetpacks in history, have recently been adopted by the Dubai Fire Department to avoid traffic congestion and access hard-to-reach fires. So, contrary to popular belief, real-life jetpacks have been around for a long time. They're surprisingly common and are rapidly catching up to their fictional counterparts. So, why then isn't everyone just using one of these to fly to work? Well, aside from the absolutely obscene cost, the simple answer is that despite nearly 60 years of development, jetpacks are still too difficult and too dangerous for the average person to fly without extensive training. Automobiles, which only drive in 2 dimensions on constrained roads and are relatively simple to operate and are highly regulated, still cause millions of serious accidents every year. Add in the 3rd dimension, tricky flight controls, and a limited fuel supply, and the risk of a deadly mishap increases exponentially. So the next time you bemoan the current state of technology by asking, "Where is my jetpack?" take a step back and ask yourself, if you don't even trust your neighbors with a car, why on earth would you trust them with a jetpack? So I really hope you found today's video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Don't forget to subscribe, and thank you for watching.